Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Kalisar. Today, we're going to have a wonderful episode about Linux distributions. And so, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about distributions I have used, and I've used a couple. I haven't used all of them, and I do have my opinions about them. And so, I'm not a distro hopper in the true sense of the word. I've only used about 4 or 5. You'll see here in a minute. I haven't used like 15, 20, every single one. I haven't gone from Arch all the way over to Ubuntu and so forth, or Gen 2 or any of that stuff. So let's go ahead and just review just the ones that I have used and who I think should use them. So here we go. So I've used Mint, I've used Ubuntu, I've used Fedora, and I've used Manjaro. Those are the 4 that I've used. I've used a few others too, but I don't feel like I'm comfortable enough with those to actually review them, such as I did install Arch, but I used it for a day just for fun, and it was good. And I've also used CentOS, but once again, I don't really think that that's something you're going to be necessarily putting on your desktop. I think you're going to probably opt for Fedora over CentOS, but what do I know? I don't know. So let's move on. So this is Mint Linux, and it is actually the second distro I used a long time ago, back in 2011. I think that it's the most ready out-of-the-box version of Linux around. I think that a couple of the other ones could give it a run for its money nowadays, but back then, it was pretty much the one that got me to actually start using Linux at that time. I had tried Ubuntu at that time, but it was lacking a driver that I needed for that computer. I wiped it, installed Mint. Mint seemed to have it, so I used Mint. And Mint is kind of I still use it every now and then, but it's more of a fallback than an actual distro that I use on a daily basis. Cinnamon is a great desktop environment for anybody coming over from Windows. You'll actually feel comfortable in that environment. So, like I have here, who is this for? This is for those people who are beginners and they want to start using Linux as their primary driver, but they're not interested in doing a lot of configuring. They just want to install it, use it. They want to get away from Windows or Mac, WinMac as I call it, for whatever reason. This is a good distribution for them. Ubuntu is the first one that I used. I think that it's probably where everybody starts at one point or another. I abandoned it for a couple of reasons. Number one, it was lacking a driver that I needed at the time. And then something else that kind of bothered me was I didn't like the original Unity desktop. I just did not like it. I didn't feel like it was customizable enough for me at the time. Now, I'd probably find a way around it. But back then, I was new, and I just didn't like the way it looked. It was like, okay, looks like you tried to copy the Mac OS, but you didn't do a good job of it. You did a terrible job of it. You did a worse job than GNOME did. So, that's just how it is. So, on one of my computers, I still have Ubuntu installed on there. It's one of my daily drivers. It's one of the 2 operating systems that I currently use. Down the road, it may get replaced by another one, so like Ubuntu or something like that, or even Manjaro. But I'll give that opinion down the road. Who knows? I'm free to change my mind. I might discover that, hey, you know what? Fedora is going to go on everything. There we go. Or, Fedora is going to go on this, but we're going to put CentOS on this because I need something with that server grade stability. So, we'll see. Next on my list, Fedora. So, Fedora is probably my second favorite distribution just because I love the terminal in that one. I think that the way they do the terminal is perfect, and I think that's kind of a Red Hat thing. I love the way that Red Hat's terminal looks and feels and everything like that. It's just like, how can you love a terminal? It sounds kind of weird. Well, you know what I mean if you use a terminal. So it's number 2 because of the terminal. It's not number 1 because I don't like GNOME or GNOME, however you want to pronounce it, because I think that for me, coming from the Mac world, it feels like a poor man's Mac interface. Now, I don't think Mac is as customizable as GNOME because you could do anything with GNOME, right? I mean, like I took Fedora, I took that vanilla Fedora and I customized it, changed the bar and everything. So I'll give GNOME that it's more customizable than what you'll get with the Mac. But For someone like me, I like slim, I like small, I like fast. So I'm more of an XFCE kind of guy than a GNOME kind of guy. But I'm gonna say that, you know what, GNOME might not be that bad. I'm being a little bit too harsh on them. So, but if I have to choose between GNOME and XFCE, I choose XFCE. If I have to choose between GNOME and Cinnamon, I choose Cinnamon. So that's kind of the hierarchy there. But that being said, on my version of Ubuntu, I am running the Unity version of GNOME. So there we go. There is that. So let's just be all over the map and see where it goes. Some other observations about this is that it's a rolling release, and the next version of Fedora is going to be using Btrfs instead of Extended 4, and that's really cool. That might make me want to check that out again, because right now I don't have Fedora on any of my computers. So when they do that, I'm not going to do what's in the beta. I'm just not that kind of person. I'm not a beta person. But once it comes out with the regular release, ooh, is it going to replace Manjaro or Ubuntu? Ooh. Good thing I don't have to make that decision today. So, who is this for? Fedora is for that person who wants Red Hat on a rolling release, or wants an OS that is on the bleeding edge, and that it is. So, with that, you could choose Arch. Moving on. So, number one on my list is Manjaro. Speaking of Arch, right? So, it is one of my two foundations with Ubuntu. It has a great repositories about that. It has access to the AURs, the Arch user repository. And I have to say, it is my favorite distribution at the moment. It is the one that I go to. I use it probably just as much, or not more, than I do Ubuntu at the moment. And the only reason that Manjaro hasn't replaced Ubuntu is because I haven't used it long enough to say, hey, you know what? It is going to replace Ubuntu. I've been using Ubuntu off and on for a very long time. So there's a good chance it'll replace it, but it has to be as stable as Ubuntu. And every now and then I hear people talk about how it's not. It's got hiccups because of that rolling release, whereas Ubuntu doesn't have a rolling release. It's just got a standard release. But we'll see. If Manjaro is still rock solid in 6 months, we may see that Ubuntu disappear and Manjaro come in its place. But then what will up on the other side? Because for some odd reason, I like to have two distributions going at the same time. Is that odd? I think it is. But anybody who likes to distro hop will understand. Of course, do I really distro hop? I've only used a handful, and they're mostly Debian based. But I would like to try MX Linux. That's on my list of distributions to try, but I don't know if that's going to be anytime soon. But either way, I would say that Manjaro is for the person who wants to use Arch but doesn't really want to go through the actual process of installing Arch and setting up Arch, because Manjaro is still bleeding edge just like Arch, and it has those Arch roots, and the standard desktop is my favorite, XFCE. So that's my list. Manjaro is number 2, and Manjaro is number 1, Fedora is number 2. That's my list. And the rest of it, they're all really good, but they're not in my top 2. Well, I want to thank you guys for watching this. Sorry to ramble on, but I don't get to ramble on very often. So here I am. Usually I try to get straight to the point, have my video, and end it. So please like, please subscribe, and you guys have a wonderful day.